Now that we got your attention, welcome to our booth.
I'm Leo, the community manager for Bellum War Games.
And I'm Konstantinos, the lead writer of Bellum War Games.
And thank you guys for joining us on our booth today. For those who do not know us so far, we are Bellum War Games.
Discreetly placed.
It is. This is product placement, the movie, pretty much. And we are the designers and manufacturers of Conquest: The Last Argument of Kings mass battle war game.
Now, for those that haven't heard of Conquest, I don't know who those people are, but still.
I know, right?
Yeah, like we're everywhere.
So
Conquest is relatively new. I mean, we're 1 year old already, which is super exciting. Mass combat, as Leo said, mass combat fantasy regimental rank and file game.
It's a fast-paced game. It's actually using an activation sequence. You know, we have certain command cards, and we set a command deck at the beginning of each turn, and we take turns activating our regiments. If you want to know more about how Conquest is being played, we have videos on our booth that you can click, and you can see exactly, how the game is played. In which I might have lost a battle there.
Yep.
Right.
And don't spoilers, man.
You don't know which side I'm playing though. That's going to be the big reveal.
In the first 5 seconds of the video or something. So yeah, for people that want to see the basics of Conquest, we have a how to play video on our booth. Just check the links below and you'll go straight to it. We also have another video that if somebody visited our booth before this, then they would have seen immediately start playing on your screens. It's the first thing you see. It's 5 things that make Conquest unique, that make Conquest stand out from other beloved war games out there.
So if you've seen us in the past, if you've played, if you've demoed the game, or if you've read about Conquest and you're not entirely sure what are the important parts and what really makes Conquest different, it's a great video, to follow along and see exactly, the key points of the game.
That is very true.
And so
some basics are out there for you to find out, but in Expos we want to show new stuff. And what you saw in the beginning of this video when we started broadcasting is faction number 5. We will have Stavros later on, our creative director and founder of Bellum War Games, talk a little more about the faction as it was created, what was the concept, how we reached the point where, well, you saw some of those renders that we are ready to produce right now. But before that, let's see what's up right next.
We have quite a few things. Now, a little bit of a not a spoiler, a little bit of a hint. Now, for those that have been following us, and for those that have been a little bit on the recent teases that we've had, you might be seeing some things on the table that you might be recognizing. But we're gonna get there soon enough.
That is true.
But before we get to the really exciting stuff, I mean, everything is exciting, but let's start with the things that we've discussed already that we've shown. Talk a little bit about what's out there. Actually, just a few days ago, they went up for pre-orders.
Yep.
So we have a little bit. We have a little bit of something for everybody, and let's start with all the goodies that the 100 Kingdoms are getting.
And they're getting a big goodie.
Right. So we have Household Guard and Gilded Legion duel set. Very excited about this. The set allows you to build either 12 Household Guard or 12 Gilded Legion, right? With the cards, the stands, the bases, and everything.
They're command groups as well.
Yeah, that's very right. And it is an exceptional kit because it provides this new playstyle for the 100 Kingdoms. So let's start a little bit with Household Guard. Let's talk a little bit about them. So Household Guard is a mainstay regiment for the Noble Lord, right? It is a much anticipated regiment and one that I'm really looking into playing with. So the Household Guard really brings on the table this, let's say, this mix between a men-at-arms and a Steel Legion, in the sense that, they're neither very defensive or very offensive. They're just a solid regiment that can hold its ground and dish out damage. And there's so many goodies and different things that the Noble Lord can be upgraded with to complement them and play with them. And I really love the fact that now you have this new dimension, this new play style that you can go from, feast, priest, and then militia, rallying up the masses. Or you can go with the Noble Lord with all the best armor and money money can buy, and then Imperial officers with crossbowmen, just the best of the best equipment. Absolutely love the theme.
And for me, it actually kind of completes the image of the Hundred Kingdoms in many ways. This is how, in my mind, an infantry version of the Noble Lord would come to the table.
Yeah.
Right there with his own personal guard that are very known for their loyalty, even though they're mercenaries, more often than not. They are an elite kind of unit for each of the households that guards them, and they are sworn to their protection. There are very few and specific examples of people that broke those oaths, and they are still shamed centuries after the fact, because there is a certain pride in being that loyal and that ready to die for your lord.
And I love how many like thematic approaches you can take. Like I was thinking of an army, that the noble lord, is just let's say a captain of the household guard of that regiment that, let's say, was that betrayed their lord, and now they're on their quest to regain their name, their good name, and so on. And so the noble lord could be one of the Ritz captains of the guard. So it gives you all this different ways with which to explore the lore and make your own stories. And that's something that I'm going to try and work a little bit towards. Also, some of you might have seen in the past that I've posted some of the conversions that I've been making between the Steel Legion and the Household Guard arms. Now you'll be able to see a little bit and imagine how that would look.
I think that the release of this duel kit will actually allow for a lot, and we'll see a lot of conversions with both other plastic kits and also some of our resin characters that could combine and create new and exciting stuff.
And it's a great time to do it. Right now, this month's Scholars of Conquest is coming to an end, and the theme is conversions.
Remember, this is not a competition.
Yeah.
It's participation.
Yeah. So don't worry about not being fully done. It doesn't matter if it's an entire regiment or not. We just want to see your ideas and your creativity. So if you just have half a regiment or just a miniature that you're trying things out on, don't feel pressured to finish it. Just post it, show us all the great work that you do, and and a lucky winner will get a great prize. And we're very fortunate to have Redgrass Games providing pallets and holders, and we're very happy to have them on board with that. So then,
the Gilded Legion, the other half of this duel kit.
The other half.
The other half of
that's
this
right.
duel kit. Now, thematically, the Gilded Legion is not so much attached to the nobility of the Hundred Kingdoms, the subfaction of the nobility in the Hundred Kingdoms. For those that see Conquest for the first time or don't really know what we're about, the Hundred Kingdoms is our take on the classic medieval human fantasy faction. So the Gilded Legion is more attached to the Imperial remnants, because the Hundred Kingdoms used to be an empire. Very few of the old Emperor's legions still exist. One is the Gilded Legion, the other is pretty much the Steel Legion, which was disbanded but refused to do so. So they were given the mandate, but they said, nope, make us. And nobody really wanted to bring a full-blown army right outside the capital of the old empire, because the response between other nobles that say, wait, I don't want you to bring so much so close to the capital, the throne is still empty, it would spiral out of control, and whoever tried to bring down the Steel Legion, they would pay a hefty price for that.
I mean, whoever has ever included them in their army and seen them, how they play on the tabletop, you're gonna understand that very quickly. You can easily imagine how they said, nope, we're not disbanding.
Yeah, and come get us.
If 12 of us can bring down an abomination, we don't care. We can pretty much bring down anything.
So the Gilded Legion used to be, during the Empire, they didn't have the best of names. They were known for their corrupted individuals and officers.
John and Jack, just one syllable names. Very uninspiring names.
Don't say that. There's Johns and Jacks watching us now, statistically more than the others. Anyway.
But now we've named them better. They're...
So they didn't have the best of reputations, if names is not good enough for you. They didn't have the best of reputations, as they acted, as the guardians of the Imperial Mint, where, the gold was and the coins were produced for the Empire, but they were also escorting tax collectors and made sure that those taxes came to the coffers of the Empire, which, of course, it was a position that allowed for a lot of, let's say, mismanagement, or intentional mismanagement, let's put it this way. So they really were despised, and in a way this stain has not left them. However, during the turmoil years of the dissolution of the empire, the Imperial Chamberlain, whose office was not disbanded because they needed, the nobility pretty much have it in their minds as, yeah, we'll keep a figurehead just to be, you know, politically correct by not disbanding completely the empire, but we don't want them to have any power. Of course, the individuals that came to the office, especially from the beginning and up until today, they've been very shrewd and very capable individuals that managed to enhance their role in the empire, even if subtly so. For instance, the first Chamberlain, actually, while the nobility was very busy squabbling with each other about what's going to happen with the remnants of the empire, he immediately started reforming very efficiently and very brutally the one legion that he knew was going to stay unaffected, which was the Gilded Legion. So what he did was he gave them, well, he made them an offer they couldn't refuse. Either reform or, well, there's other candidates.
Or they could be other. I mean, they're wearing a full face helmet, so no one would know the difference, really.
So pardons were offered at those that were ready to actually reform and prove so. And slowly, steadily, there was a very kind of close-knit group. It became also almost kind of a, in a way, like a community within the community. They have their own kind of complex where they live with their families, just to be sure that they are kept under control even these days. But in time, this kind of created very strong bonds between those families. They became traditional, passing from father to son, if, of course, one was able to join, because right now the recruitment standards of the Gilded Legion are very, very high and hard. And they have, even though they're still kind of mistrusted by the population, the taint of the tax collectors remains, but they have truly reformed. They are a very, very capable force. And when you see them on the field, it usually means that there is some vested interest, because they can act as mercenaries, but it's a specific, much like the Steel Legion, even though a bit less so. Their presence means that there is either a very powerful player on the field in one or even both sides, or the Chamberlain has taken a special interest in the conflict, or that somebody has deep enough pockets that, and influence, of course. And the Gilded Legion believes that, honestly, this person would advance the interests of the Imperial remnants one way or another. They might disagree even among the members of the Gilded Legion about the methods that this should happen, but they still have kind of a selection process about whom they serve.
Either way, I think that when a legion gets involved in a fight, you know, something serious is about to happen or is happening.
Yeah.
Either way, they don't just show up because, you know. And I think at this point is a great point to mention that all of these kits that we're going to be discussing today will be available for you to use in your Path of Conquest armies.
Yep.
Path of Conquest, if you haven't followed our program so far, we're working with the team from On Tabletop, Warren, John, Jerry, and Justin, and they're bringing their armies from 0 all the way to 2,000 points, painting the armies, you know, having all these great projects that they're running right now. We're going through 6 milestones, and at every milestone you're going to see their army growing, reaching up to the final climax of the program, where they're going to be fighting against each other, playing games, and following the list that I've built for them. And that's,
I can't wait to see
I know,
that.
right? And so it's great. You can check our website and our Path of Conquest website for everything that has been released so far. You can check all the videos that we've put out so far
On our social media, and also on their page.
That's right.
Yeah.
With how to paint, you can find on our Colors of Conquest page. You know, our studio painter has done some great work on the on tutorials, how to paint on all these different levels, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And so you can follow the game, you can follow the program along. You can also follow our vanguards that are working on their armies for the program. And of course, if you want to jump in with exactly the same armies like on Tabletop, we have Path of Conquest bundles that are running right now that will allow you to build the exact same forces. And if you, of course, want to take a different approach and you want to build a different army list and explore the faction in a different way, of course, we do have a great promo right now that if you get a core set, you also get a regiment of Steel Legion and Marksman clones, right? And that
is a great entry-level deal, especially for 2 players. Of course, it's also for 1 player that wants to have both armies, but if 2 players want to begin playing Conquest, then kind of the opening conflict that we have, which is 100 Kingdoms against the Spires, is very well represented in that offer.
It will also allow you to play right off the bat the scenario that you'll see in the How to Play video.
Yep.
Right? So you'll be able to play exactly the same battle, learn the rules in the exact same way as we're presenting it, and tell us what you like and what you think.
And if you're interested in the lore, that bundle will actually help you replicate the Battle of Nepenthe, which is what we played. And we played, Leo was showing me the game, we played the demo battle that you also see in How to Play. And from that, Nepenthe came to be.
So yeah, this is quite a piece. It's I think, a historical piece for Conquest.
Yeah, that is very true.
This battle, because it gave birth to Nepenthe.
And it started pretty much everything. All the conflicts and the other factions jumping into the new kind of status quo of the world. The spark that ignited that flame is actually the Battle of Nepenthe. So it's a great place to start.
Yeah, and talking about factions jumping in, we have next up new releases for Nords.
True. Ooh, let's do this. I can do this.
So we have 2 new releases. One is the Captain. The Captain is a command upgrade for the Nord. It's also
put that from the side of the
for the they're very Dweghom are very aggressive. They're very angry. They're just like going to try and fight other characters. So the Captain is a command upgrade for the Nords. As if you're not aware right now, in our rules, we also have a retinue system that allows you to customize pretty much who the character is going to be coming onto the battle with, like having bodyguards and so on. So the command upgrades, apart from just being a regiment upgrade, it can also work as a retinue upgrade as well. Although very soon you might not have to use them.
Yep.
If you don't, and
stick around, find out more.
Stick around. That's very interesting. But one of the most important, I think, releases for the Nords today are the Huskarls.
Yeah, they are. First of all, they're beautiful. If you ask me, at least it's my privilege. I find them a beautiful regiment. Mm-hmm. They bring this kind of bulk and heaviness that the Nords so far lack. Well, intelligent, because the Ugr were there, but
Ugr and Mountain Jotnar
was there, but no. But they bring up the more human face of the Nords, which is equally important as their monster face. Like, this is a balance that we strove to achieve from the get-go when we were discussing, even lore-wise, the Nords, that it's where man and beast and man and monster meet. This is one of the elite of man in this scenario.
I think the Huskarls really give you an understanding how come the Nords came to conquer their surroundings
despite them being
in a sense. Yeah, I think it really shows that even though they have to deal with monsters essentially of various sizes, really, right?
Not to mention the elements themselves. Mannheim is really not a friendly place for someone to settle, but they've thrived there in a way for centuries, ages even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you get to see really, their vigor, their strength, and that is really reflected on the tabletop. And game-wise, it is a very important regiment, and I think it really adds to the roster of the Nords. So far, especially if you are following John's from John the Huskarl, as we name him, from on Tabletop team and his army that he's building, you'll notice that the army that he's building has a lot of raiders, Ugr and Mountain Jotnar, but the whole concept is that the raiders attack as quickly as possible and always fight to have the enemy on their back foot. During the later stages, you'll see John also using Huskarls. And what's very important is that now the Huskarls provide essentially this regiment that allows you to hold onto an objective and withstand a counter assault. Because the raiders are really good they're really devastating, they're strong, they're fast, but they're very lightly armored, and they're very prone to to not dealing with well in a consolidated counterattack, right?
Well, I actually kind of like this, not only from a balance point of view, because they are a regiment that comes in early and rushes into the objectives, but also because it adds to what we really wanted from the beginning, for Conquest to be a very, very, very brutal and brutal game with a lot of...
that's definitely something that the Nords are. If anything, they're brutal. But I think that, Huskarls are a medium regiment that really adds and really allows you and helps you to solidify your position.
Okay.
I mean, you have the Ugur, cleave, 4 attacks, they're big, they're bulky. You have the Mountain Yodnar, but it is the Huskarls that really help you maintain this this initiative that you have, right? And make sure you always keep your opponent on the back foot. That's very important. They're very useful for the roster. And next up, the Dweghom.
They are my personal favorite army in a way. Well, I usually like human factions. So, and a classic, both the Nords and the 100 Kingdoms speak to me when it comes to the models and what I prefer painting and everything. But lore-wise, I think the Dweghom are my favorite.
So good news for everyone that is not playing Dweghom. So the Dweghom, I do love, how the different approach to the dwarven archetype. So I really like that. I really like, how they are aggressive in nature. It's just their aggression really goes beyond just fighting someone else. They are quite brutal within themselves, and I think the new releases really capture that.
What I really like about them, both lore-wise and how they play, is that they have this kind of duality. Yeah, sure, they're very aggressive. They are very strong. They're very powerful. However, they also have this curse, because all of that aggression, all of that strength that comes with being Dweghom is also their curse. Their entire society is one based on, if not straight up violence, then at least a warlike state that is ever reproducing from an individual level into a whole hold level, if not the sub-factions within one of their holds. They are the victims of their own gifts in many ways, and that's what I like about them. That's the twist I like about our version of on the dwarf archetype.
And I think this is really well representing the actual Herald of Flame.
Yeah.
Because Herald of Fire, the Herald of Fire is literally on fire.
Yeah.
It's literally on fire. It's just this absolute, raw power, I would say that is, in that he's just allowing it to consume him and allowing him to, to really take it all in. And the Herald of Fire is, like the Captain, is a command upgrade for the Dweghom. Right now, we're fleshing out all the different command upgrades and the retinues, but we're going to see a little bit more about that later on.
Tease.
And the next thing that is coming out for the Dweghom, although it's not coming out this month, it's one of the next releases, but we always like to tease and we always like to show a little bit of what's coming.
I think it's great to see you what's coming ahead.
It's the Fireforged. Now, if you are wondering, are these cannons? They are. They are magical fireball cannon.
It's a
missile.
they produce a magical blast in a way, but with a Herald of Fire, they become full on
with a flame caster.
With a flame caster, you're right. Sorry,
they have an upgrade.
Here's the rules, man. I'm lore.
But always make sure, if you want to read more about the rules, if you want to get more in depth and see all the different upgrades and all the different options that you have with your regiment, the rules are for free. So whether you want to read it on your companion rulebook or on on the screen, you always have the option to do so. So you can check our rules and FAQ on our website.
Again, on our booth, we have a link that takes you directly there.
And you can read all about them. You can see their stats. You can get everything. But what's really important about the Fireforged, to talk a little bit about what they do on the tabletop.
Yeah. And what makes them stand out, really? I mean, it's kind of a unique unit in a way.
It's quite a unique regiment, actually, so far, because they are short-ranged infantry. The closest thing to it, I would say, would be the Stalkers, that they are short-ranged. But the actual difference here is, first of all, they have a 16-inch range. And now, for those that are familiar with the rules, you would know that 16 inches are the maximum range, not the effective range, right? Effective range is half of that. because beyond that, we're obscured. We fire half shots, and of course, make sure to check the video how to play to get all this different information. But the important thing is that they have armor piercing too, right?
That is hard.
And they fire a lot of shots, really up close and personal. And the thing is that if they get charged, they're very tough. They can handle themselves in combat, right? So they are the kind of regiment that, you know, you want to make sure you take out before they start firing.
And or dance around them, stay out of their range.
Yeah, or dance around them. They are great at denying space to the opponent.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a very good way to utilize them on the field. Like, set them up, make them deny, or push an area that your opponent will want to avoid until he can at least, if not take out, then at least kind of minimize their impact on the field.
And they're deadly when used against points on the table that the opponent really wants to be on.
Yeah.
Also known as objectives. Right? Right. And really throwing them on an objective when your opponent is capturing it, it's going to bring a lot of pain. And if you use a flame caster, right, it's an upgrade for the Fireforged. You get torrential fire, which means that you do extra hits for every hit. And that is just devastating. This is when the magical fire cannon becomes a magical fire flamethrower, right? And it throws it with extreme prejudice and very little care.
Well, that is very true.
Very true for life overall.
These are the people that literally broke the world to be freed of their dragon overlords. But when we say broke the world, which is what gave birth to Eruption as a spell.
Eruption has been a very interesting. It has a very interesting history as a spell. For those that have played Conquest for a little while, we'll know. We'll definitely know. We had a little video like showing what happens.
I love that
When a sorcerer gets a little bit too upset.
Because we nerfed
Eruption. Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that's up for the immediate next releases.
Mm-hmm.
So I suggest we do this. Let's watch our starting video one more time, remind people the one of the two big releases and big reveals of this expo, and we'll come back with Stavros to talk a little bit about his creation of the Wadrune.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
We saw a bunch of things there. We saw Wadrune. We saw don't adopt, overcome. I love the motto. I love the approach. And we saw dinosaurs.
Yeah, feathered dinosaurs.
Feathered dinosaurs. And a big dinosaur, which, to be honest, I didn't care. I looked at the teeth. I didn't care if it had feathers or not. Folks at home, we have with us Stavros.
Hi, everybody.
Stavros is our founder and creative director, and he's here to tell us all about the Dweghom. So,
not Dweghom, Wadrune.
Wadrune. Good. So, we saw great things. Give us the elevator pitch. What is it that makes them great?
It's going to be a long elevator. Like, you're going up a very tall building.
It's a tall building. Okay.
Okay, but the really short elevator pitch is orcs and dinosaurs. Done.
Okay, done. We can.
Let's go.
Video over. Video over.
So yes, starting from there, we all like certain tropes in fantasy, right? and certain things have to be done in a certain way. For example, you can play around with the dwarf archetype as much as you like, but ultimately there are certain traits that they must possess. This irascible or difficult nature, relatively short stature, shorter than your average human at least, and these things have to be maintained. And for the orcs, the large violence is imperative. But as we've seen from a number of recent things, it's not so imperative that they be evil. And so we tried. I tried to do a different approach on the Wadrune. They are remarkably innocent. Their entire civilization is actually only a couple of 100 years old, and they grew up in the shadow of great civilizations and in the wreckage of great civilizations. So while they were bred for war, because they were bred by the spires who sought to recoup some losses, because the notion of growing clones the entire time was a little bit obnoxious. They wanted a warrior race that would just breed itself and still be loyal. The problem is they did it a little bit too well. So the idea is that when the first breeding pairs were created, they started from scratch. They used genetic markers and strands, as they call them, from all the races, but they didn't have a base race created. They went, they created their strand from scratch, and it didn't work. And so they tried it again. They perfected it a little bit more, and it didn't work again. And they tried this like 5, 6, 7, 8. They stopped counting at around the 50. And each time the specimen was more perfect, but still they wouldn't awake. Or they wouldn't quicken into consciousness. The bodies, the hearts would beat, but there would be nothing there. And then suddenly, the last experiment they try succeeds. These 2 breeding pairs wake up. What they don't realize is that they had created bodies perfect enough that they could actually house a primordial shard within them. And so the 4 predecessors, let's call them, the 4 primogenitors to the entire Wadrune race, are actually small little fragments or elements of war, famine, conquest, and death.
Okay, that's a so that's not someone to mess with.
No,
Okay.
they definitely were not. And the spires realized, being smart people, realized this very, very quickly and pressed the sort of sleep button immediately.
Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep.
No. And it said, okay, that's a success of some sort, but those things are terrifying. Tone it down. Don't kill those things, just tone it down. And they went through successive iterations. Now that they had a viable start, they went through successive iterations. And different generations were bred. Now, the interesting thing is, for example, the second generation that was bred displayed the traits that they hadn't bred in them, more particularly a penchant for sorcery. This scared them, so they made, without knowing what they were doing, because they haven't figured sorcery and magic out yet, they changed it enough and bred another generation which came much stronger, tougher, bigger, but they didn't want that either. And they slowly started breeding it down until they had a warrior race that was stable and that they could use and that wasn't, too terrifying. But as things usually happen, something went wrong with their plan, and that something was the fall. So
a little miscalculation.
Slight miscalculation. They didn't take into account the possibility of plummeting gods.
Yeah.
So they were forced, in the chaos that followed, they were forced to evacuate the spire that was breeding this in the middle of the deserts. There were 3 other supporting spires lending their efforts to it. And the only way to do so, to actually get enough time to evacuate, was unleashing the nascent race of the Wadrune on the enemies that were circling them. At the time, the Dweghom, who during the fall had come up and basically started wailing on everybody. And so the Wadrune were unleashed. They were obviously being pushed back by the Dweghom. And the Spires got so desperate they actually woke the Primes, the primogenitors, let's say. And the effect was galvanizing on the race. They were, for lack of a better term, pretty much living gods of the Wadrune. They took over the defense, and they took the fight to the Dweghom, and the Spires had time to escape. Now, the interesting thing in the fight, 3 of the Primes fall.
Okay.
Death, war, and famine fall. And only Conquest survives, using their sacrificing manages to break through the Dweghom, encircling Dweghom lines with a large enough population to ensure the survival of his people. The Dweghom weren't there really for them. They proceed to tear down the spires and move on their path of destruction. And so now the Wadrune find themselves in the middle of an empty desert, the shattered remnants of 1-2 major civilizations. And they adapt and they overcome. So the spires slowly release their biomass over the years as that was gathered within them, and these creates incredibly lush oases around the spires in the middle of the wastelands.
Oh, I know where this is going.
So that's where the Wadrune settle and manage to survive, because one of the big flaws of the race is that they are actually incredibly calorie demanding. They were bred to be warriors, and the spires always assumed they'd be there to support. And this is going to be very evident through their culture and their race. So what happens then is the spires had all sorts of test subjects gathered eons ago.
Oh man!
And these start breaking loose. And these are the spires. They don't collect bunnies.
Yeah.
They
or even if they do, they don't end up being...
they don't remain bunnies for long.
For long, yeah.
So, we're talking about apex predators from all periods. We're talking about creatures so impressive that even the spires were like, okay, we'll see what the hell this is. And that's how we get dinosaurs. Today's day and age, the spires basically had them in jars and were figuring out what they could do given their fixation on the dragons. They were trying to figure out if there was something draconic within the dinosaurs. But there's all sorts of nasty, creepy crawlies in there as well. And the Wadrune contest have to fight for their space in these massive oases with them. And their society evolves basically from nothing. It's obviously very warlike because they've been bred to be warriors. But what you have is Conquest, the last remaining living god. It's a sheep.
I'm banned from the writer's office. A lot of these things I'm hearing right now.
He's banned because he makes fun of us.
Yeah, well,
He's called our he finds the most insulting names for fantastic ideas that we have, and we just go, toss. You killed it.
I consider this creative input, but it's not being seen that way always.
Anyway, so basically, there's a lot of speculation that she engineered the death of the other 3 primes in order to be able to guide the nascent race into something that wasn't what they were bred for.
Okay.
And that's her, let's call it her... Sisyphus was the guy who had to push the boulder up the hill and then would always roll back down.
Yes.
So that's her task. She's trying to get the Wadrune to fight against the nature that was bred into them. And she rules with an iron fist. But also, well, she's very relaxed in most things, but there are a few things that she's incredibly strict about. Too much detail, we'll get into that. So Orc society is strongly based on martial prowess. There's so little resources out there, and they're so limited to a burgeoning population that competition and survival of the fittest is just how they go about everything. So you have different strata to their society. It's all based around clan structure, but certain things are different. It's matriarchal,
Okay.
but not the way we would see it. It's got a weird division of labor. War is left as the province of men, and the breeding women are considered to be more sensible, and they're the ones that manage the society. So it's more of a division of labor than the traditional matriarchy or patriarchy that we're used to. You've also got subcults within. You've got the speakers, who one interesting twist of being created from what's it called? From strands or DNA native to the planet is that the orcs have a Wadrune have a tremendous affinity to those beings that went into their making. So they have fantastic beast masters capable of taming and in some extreme cases communicating directly with the beasts. This is how the dinosaurs have come into Wadrune society. And they're sort of a cased onto themselves. You also have the shaman, and this is very interesting because the shaman are incredibly old. They are basically the second generation. And
Oh wow! So that's
yeah,
okay.
and it's curious though. Direct descendants from the second generation sometimes hold a gift, and every once in a while one is born that is a throwback, sort of because the race is very young and it was engineered. It's not perfect, so you occasionally get throwbacks to the earlier generations. And that, for example, you have the shaman and the warbred, who again, the warbred are the third generation, which were the bigger, stronger, tougher, and they were trying to make them more aggressive and dumber to see if that would help with
That always goes well.
Yeah.
Make them more aggressive and not as capable
Yeah.
of thinking. Like,
So
You
that plan didn't go well,
works.
but the warbred, for example, still exists. And one problem that they have is when a warbred is born, it very often means that the mother dies because they're just so big, and they live with the stigma of the first thing they do is kill their mother.
oh, and matriarchs are so important that on
Exactly.
its own. It's very interesting. I hope folks you're paying attention, because I think it's fair to say that a lot of the things we're explaining right now are, let's say, a little bit of a tease of what we're going to be seeing when the Wadrune are out. So I think if you're paying close attention to what we're discussing right now, I think we're going to see a lot of these things on the tabletop, and that's very
Hopefully
very
all of them. The goal is to present everything. And the last important aspect of their culture are what we call the cults, the primordial cults. So even though war, death, and famine are dead, they are worshipped not as intensely or as actively as Conquest is, but they are still worshipped, and each has their own cult. Now the thing is, Conquest has tried to shift the meaning and the balance of these of this worship to not make it a nihilistic, negative, evil approach to these concepts. So, for example, the cult of war are also the blacksmiths. Metal has a very sort of sacred connotation to the Wadrune because it's very rare. The only way to get it is through battle. So having metal weapons is a sign of status. Only the blooded and above have metal weapons. Everybody below that uses simple wood, bone, horn weaponry. And it's only the what do you call them? The cult of war that actually uses metal armor that they have shaped themselves. And the cult of war is where most of the warbred end up, because the cults are sort of separate from society and the stigma doesn't follow them there.
Oh, I see.
So, you're eventually going to have these big armored behemoths, juggernaut guys, and they're the cult of war. So it's creation and destruction at the same time. They're trying to re-emphasize, makers and destroyers. And the same thing has happened in all of the other cults. So, for example, famine are the fanatics and the lore keepers of the Wadrune race. So they're the crazy guys at the forefront of battle with brazier is burning and flails and running headlong and like unstoppable in their devotion and fanaticism to the growth of the Wadrune race. Recording, they're the ones that record and write down these myths. So again, destruction and preservation. And lastly, there's death, the cult of death, who are the blade masters and the doctors. So one of the interesting quirks of the Wadrune is that they possess tremendous hearing. So much so that the blade masters can enter a trance in which they literally close their eyes and they echolocate, basically, even in the midst of battle. So their coordination as a group is fantastic. But they're also the surgeons and the healers of the race. Again, that destruction tempered by creation, in an attempt to limit the impact that these would have on Wadrune society. And through it all is the cult of Conquest that follows her edicts, tries to prevent senseless interscene combat within the race, and guides the Wadrune population. There's also some outcasts, Wadrune who have rejected this life, taken to the southern seas, raiding and pillaging. They're going to be coming out sort of as an add-on sub-faction at some point in the future, but they're very much there.
A lot of interesting teasers.
Yeah.
I think that's a great representation of what the Wadrune is, and I think that you'll notice that when we are designing a faction for Conquest, we're making sure that our motto is always, it has to be played as advertised, right?
Yes.
And so game terms, I would say, even though rules is something that we're going to play a little closer to the test for now, I think it's fair to say, and what you should expect, is that the lore you heard right now is emphasized and is shown and is represented on the battlefield. So a lot of the things that you're hearing right now are actually, to a great extent, in the way that the Wadrune are going to be playing. We want to make sure that every faction has its own way that it interacts with the lore and the world of Conquest, and you can rest assured that that the Wadrune are going to be the same. Now, for our last and one of equally important teases here, we have our founders exclusives.
Yeah.
And who better to talk to us about the founder himself? So some of you might have been following some tease or breadcrumbs that we've left out there, and some of you might have been seeing a very interesting Spire creation, right? So you've been asking a lot about it, and so we're here to give you a little bit of a taste. If you keep following us, stay tuned. In the future, we're going to be revealing a lot more. But for now, what are Founders exclusives?
So Founders exclusives are, in effect, a new collectible line of products, obviously set within the world of Conquest. But the idea is that they're not so much for the gamer. They're more a little bit for the collector. So the idea is it's going to be usable in game. So in other words, it has an in-game analog in the rules somewhere. But that's not the focus with which we created it. We created it as a showcase piece to exalt good miniatures, really, to create something that hasn't been done before. So we started relatively tame.
Relatively.
Yeah. Well, you can't go too tame. But the interesting thing about the Founders exclusive line is that it's going to be limited numbers. Again, remember that whatever a Founders exclusive represents, we will have an equivalent in our main line. It's just the Founders exclusive will frankly be sexier. Because, I mean, they're being made in our resins, which you guys already know the quality of. And that comes with a lot fewer limitations, a lot more possibilities. And there's going to be one for every faction, and hopefully they're going to be coming out every year around, again, the festive season. there are so many cool plans for this line. I wish I could talk about them, but they are intended, as I mentioned before, for the collector and the fan, and they're going to be unique, and they're really good. They're really good, very characterful, and each of them tells a story tied to the lore in some way. So there's one for every faction. I think I already mentioned that.
Yeah, and actually, so we have a little bit of an announcement regarding that. So some of you have seen the Spire one, the one that we have been leaving breadcrumbs towards, and that is a representation of something that can be played in game. Now, make sure to leave comments. Send on our social media, on Facebook, right? What you think that is, and if you find what it is, you can enter. One lucky winner will win one of the Founders exclusives. So make sure, go on our social media, on Discord. We have everything on our booth, on our digital booth. And if you think you know what the Founders exclusive is for Spires and what it represents, you'll enter the raffle to win one of the Founders exclusives, and that's very.
Good luck on that one.
Good luck on that one. Now let's play. Before we play once again the video that we have for the tease that we put out for the Spire Founders exclusive. Is there any last words you'd like to share with the people out there about the Founders exclusive, about the Wadrune, about the game? First of all, thank you for joining us. It's great to see you.
Absolutely great to see. Well, we're not really seeing you, but great to reach out. Great to talk to you. Frankly, we're very excited. You are finally going to start seeing what we want our world to start looking like. We've heard everything that the players have said. The first releases that are going to be coming out next year are going to be to cover the gaps in the armies that are missing, particularly for the 100 Kingdoms and the Nords, to try to bring them up to par. When the Wadrune release, they will do so in a more full manner, so the players are going to have a wide range of product to be able to dive into them and not feel that they're playing at a disadvantage with them. As for the exclusives, I mean, just look at them when they come out. That's all I can say. We really enjoyed making them. They were a challenging project, but we're very happy with the final results. That about sums it up.
Folks, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
It's been a crazy time. COVID has really turned things upside down. It's great to be able to talk to you and connect with you, even in this format. Although it's one of the first events that I've managed to sleep on my own bed, so that's that is quite and we didn't have to build a booth for it, so that a stand for it. So that was a difference. But stay well, stay healthy, stay safe, enjoy Conquest. We have all these different programs that are running. The community is out there, is growing, is thriving. There are a lot of people around the world that are sharing their love for Conquest. Join us on Discord and on our social media. And thank you very much for joining us.
And reach out to us. Really, we are on the Discord. We're the ones who check our the Facebook feed. Mm-hmm. If you have questions, if you want to become a Vanguard, if you want any information about our product, reach out. It's us. Okay?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Take care and play Conquest.